which is maybe part of a greater conversation, is the Benjamin Saint Just or Juste. I apologize if I'm butchering that name. But obviously the former Michigan defensive back out of Canada, transferred to Minnesota, is now playing for the Commanders. He came out and released a TikTok talking about his experience at Michigan. And for those of you who missed it, he medically retired, which based off of the definition, medically retiring is an option that allows those who suffer severe injuries and can no longer participate in collegiate athletics an opportunity to still have an education paid for. And so in short, again, if you haven't really heard the story, 4-star athlete, top 15 corner, 6'3", kind of a really good build for a corner, especially in the NFL, to which point he is now there playing for the Commanders, having a really solid career. He played 3 games in 2017, hurt his hamstring in, I think it was 2018 training camp, and then had just issues kind of recovering. And so he wanted to go see a specialist. He then signed a piece of paper, which is a key part of the story, to rehab at another campus. He said he felt ready to come back within 2 months. And then coaches asked him to sit out the 2018 season, which he then did. And we're ready to come back in 2019. Michigan essentially moved on from him. And so you read that story or you hear that story, you can watch it and then read up on it, and you think to yourself, that's pretty nasty, diabolical work thing to do. And I'm thinking, what's the story? I don't want to say what's the real story there, right? Because that is the real story that he gave. But what is kind of the other side of things? And you look at recent history with Michigan, Cade, not that Cade or Eric all were medically redshirted or asked to medically retire, but there were conflicts with maybe the training staff, maybe not so much Cade, but more Eric all and how to recover. And then you kind of look back at other guys like Corey Malone Hatcher, a big time 4-star recruit out of Michigan, out of the state of Michigan. Did something to his Achilles, couldn't quite recover. And then that's not the only story. There's Gabe Newberg, who's a 3-star of Ohio. I can't remember what his injury was, but then Isaiah Gash, who had that big 4th down conversion against Illinois this year. He had a second cartilage transplant surgery on his knee, which sounds very serious. But then he medically retired. And then you look at a few other players in NCAA, and you look at Harry Miller, which I understand that situation was a little bit different because it was mental, and there were I think something about suicidal thoughts, and obviously equally as serious. And glad he's, I think, doing better. It sounds like he's doing better. But he had medically retired. But then Marcus Crowley, the running back, right? I think he had to medically retire as well. And then just lastly, Jalen Phillips. I think he was the number 1 recruit of the country, went to UCLA, medically retired, then went to Miami. Yeah. And then I saw, again, because I was reading up on all of this today, South Carolina had 5 this year who medically retired. And so I think it's a super interesting story because you immediately will take the side of the player. Like I take Benjamin St. Juste's side, no doubt, because he's got to do what's best for him. But then it's like, what's the story coming from the school? And I know each case is different, but what is the school's stance? Like, why did they do that? Was there somewhere where they saw him as, he's a body that was not being used and they want to fill his spot, and they thought that's a hamstring, that's the second time hurting that. A lot of times guys don't come back from that. Let's fill the spot. I'm not saying that's the right move, but it's still, and maybe an interesting thought there. So I don't know, Garrison, what do you think of the whole medically redshirt? Because I got a few other thoughts there, but I want to get yours as well on kind of what you think happened there, but then the other just topic of medically redshirting, or sorry, not medically redshirting, medically retiring.
Right. Like simply, I think, like you said, it's nasty. Because like basically from what I get from St. Juice, because like Michigan hasn't said anything about it, they made him medically retire. They put it out there that he medically retired. Yep. It wasn't him that said it. He talked about how like his dad, like they have signed papers. One of it being like, and of course you need to read the paperwork, but I remember being 19, man. I didn't read stuff like I didn't read through stuff like that. Nope. And he talked about how like after he got done, and one of the specialists told him he's clear, he's fine. his parents came down from Canada, had a meeting with Jim, and basically they had already given a scholarship away. And I'm guessing that was in the paperwork. And he talked about how like his dad went off on Jim, and I think it's because he had no idea. He went to the specialist with the intentions of being back on the team, and when Jim told him he shouldn't to set out that season, I do find that kind of weird.
Mhm.
I think they from the get go he planned on giving his scholarship away, and he should have told him that from the get go.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, we
I
obviously don't know that for certain, but it's a fair guess.
yeah, I don't know for certain, but I said, I'm taking the kid's words.
Yeah.
I am
Yeah.
taking the kid's words on that.
Yeah. I mean,
And
oh,
when
go ahead.
I talked to someone who's an assistant AD at a college, and they even told me paperwork like that is not normal. It is that is, and they said that someone in compliance should have been going through whoever he signed and vetted that because that shouldn't be in there. If you send a kid somewhere to a specialist to get healthy, you should not be taking his scholarship away from him or medically retiring. You can't medically retire someone when they get three different people that tell you can play the game of football, and then for some odd reason the school's telling you can't. That's weird to me. I
Yeah, that's
don't.
the other part of it that I don't quite understand either. Is if like he's a talented kid. Eric All was a great tight end. I don't want to say great, but a really good tight end. Like had the
Mhm.
makings to be, I think his makings to be an NFL tight end. And he's going to a school
Totally.
now that'll definitely help you get there. But you look at that situation and there were disagreements with Michigan's medical staff and the families and the players. And what's going on there? Because it's not like he's no disrespect, a walk-on freshman that you can kind of just throw, I mean, you're waste a scholarship on. But he's he's a contributor and a pivotal piece of that offense.
Coming into last year, Eric All was a top 5 to 10 tight end in the nation.
Love it. Exactly. And so like what is it just the thought that Michigan doesn't want to be on the hook? Is it the thought that they don't want to be liable? Is it the thought that maybe they look at an injury like that and say, okay, in history, the result of an injury like this is guys are done. And so let's just move on because it's a competitive market, it's a competitive industry. We got to keep going. I'm not saying that again. I'm not saying that's right, but is that what the thought is? I don't know if if anyone else knows, like I would love to talk more about that because I read that story a few times. I'm thinking like he was done dirty. He was done wrong.
Yeah, man. I mean, you go and have a good career at Minnesota, then you go to the NFL. You haven't been hurt since.
Yep.
You
Yep.
ain't been hurt
Yeah.
since.
No hamstring injuries, no deep tissue. Yeah, I was going through the comments on his TikTok posts, and someone said they want to send their son there. Thanks for sharing. And he responded, "They're way better now," assuming he's talking about Michigan.
Yeah.
So he sounds like there's no bad blood, which is good because he turned out to be just fine, actually
Yeah,
great.
you're fine. You're in the NFL, man.
In the NFL. Those are past concerns, but it is a reminder for players and for actually anybody, read the fine print. And then for players especially, this is a business, and he said that in the video. They're not looking out for you. You got to look out for yourself, whether they are or not looking out for you. But that's what he said. And I think that's a good takeaway.
They didn't go top 50, 6'3" corner is crazy though.
Exactly. I just again, if someone from Michigan's team wants to reach out and talk to us about that, we'd love to have you on.
Yeah.